Hello, football fans, and welcome to episode 34 of View from the Sideline podcast. Coming up this week, it seems no one wants to qualify for next season's Champions League, with defeats for Spurs and Arsenal and United and Chelsea playing out. A draw leaves the race for third and fourth, how we left it last week. In the EFL, it's time to celebrate for Norwich and Sheffield United as they secure promotion to the Premier League. No one quite knows what went on at Ellen Road, but we'll try to figure it out. Luton and Barnsley secure promotion to the Championship, and we wave goodbye to Yeovil as relegation from League Two is confirmed. Pete keeps his slot on the podcast with another teaser, and we reach the final 2 rounds on the Predictions Challenge. Part 2 of today's podcast will see us go through the nominations for the PFA Team of the Year, and we give our views on the players who made the 11. So here we go with episode 34.
Hello and welcome to episode 34 of View from the Sideline podcast. Chris here, and Rich is with me. Hello, Rich.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Rich. Yourself?
Yeah, can't complain.
Good.
Not too bad.
So we've got lots to talk about, so we'll get started. And the ever-present Pete's teaser remains and will remain now for some time. So what's his teaser this week, Rich?
Yeah, so this week it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, I think. But there's ones that you probably it's a sort of question you've probably heard before. So I'm sure we'll have a good guess at it. So what Pete's asking us this week is, who is the only player to have scored a hat-trick in the Premier League, the Championship, Leagues 1 and 2, in the League Cup, the FA Cup, and for his country? So He's pretty much scored a hat-trick in every competition probably he's ever played in. So yeah, that's pretty tricky, I think. I mean, they're not going to all be for the same club. I think we can pretty much safely say that. But we'll have to have a think about that, Chris, and just have a stab in the dark at the end of today's episode, I think.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Premier League review. So we'll start with Liverpool versus Huddersfield. Some would say a bit of a masterclass from Liverpool. And I thought Mane had a very good game here, but I just think Huddersfield, just the end of the season, just can't come quick enough for them. It must be. I thought to myself, it must be weird being a Huddersfield fan. Obviously, you've been down for 4 or 5 weeks now. It just must be quite strange, just watching your team just fade away this badly. But to be honest with you, I don't think we expected much more than I predicted 4-0 in the predictions that I do. But yeah, 5-0.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't. I get what you're saying with Huddersfield. I mean, it must be difficult, but I know we'll talk about Fulham a bit later. But I mean, they're obviously in the same situation, and they've won 3 out of 3 without conceding a goal. I think the game sort of showed that Huddersfield just are not good enough this season. I mean, conceding a goal after sort of 15 seconds clearly doesn't help, especially when you're away to Liverpool. But I think it was probably always a comfortable win even before the game started. But Naby Keita's getting some goals, isn't he? I think he's got like 3 in his last 6. I think he was a bit more renowned for red cards, wasn't he, before he actually signed for Liverpool.
He's been a bit of a late bloomer this season, hasn't he? I don't really recall him in the first sort of half of the season having a huge amount of success in front of goal. But yeah, he's doing all right now.
Yeah, I think I just feel the game was just overall. It was in no way a surprise.
No.
And I just think it's the sort of game that, especially with Liverpool, with City still going for the Premier League, it was it was a must-win game. But I think it was a game you always thought Liverpool.
Liverpool obviously playing tonight away in the Nou Camp as well. So a big game for them tonight. So we'll move on to the Tottenham West Ham game, Rich. So first defeat at your new stadium.
Yes.
I'll just quickly summarise what I thought of the game. They didn't do very well, did they, Tottenham?
No.
To be fair, it was an okay game. But I actually thought West Ham probably did deserve to win it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's difficult to disagree. I mean, I listened to pretty much the whole game on the radio, and it wasn't till the Saturday evening that I actually saw the highlights. But I think I'd like to try and sort of join this Saturday's game against West Ham for Spurs into last night's game against Ajax, if I may, Chris, if that's all right.
You may.
The first defeat, the first goal conceded, all that sort of stuff. I don't think that bothers any Spurs fan really, because it was going to happen sooner or later. I think the match against West Ham on Saturday and then the first half against Ajax last night is probably the most unenergised Spurs performances I think I've seen under Pochettino. Although Spurs dominated possession against West Ham, and I think West Ham actually ended up having more attempts on goal and definitely more on target. And it's disappointing because I think that if Spurs had gotten the 3 points against West Ham, which would have, I think it probably would have done and dusted with the results on Sunday, their Champions League qualification, there may have been a bit more freedom last night, although I did think Ajax first half were unbelievable. They were so good. Spurs just couldn't live with them. And from a West Ham point of view, I think it just sums West Ham up. That as a West Ham fan, you must be so frustrated that some of the performances they put in, and admittedly, it wasn't a first-string Spurs side. I mean, there was a few players out. They're still a decent side, but they go away to Spurs and they get a 1-0 victory and they play pretty well, to be honest. So it must be pretty frustrating. But on the plus side, from a Spurs fan to take from the two games, one is because all the other teams in the top in the race for the top four dropped points.
No one's bothered, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still in the tie with Ajax, although we lost 1-0 at home, the away goal, etc., etc. But it wouldn't surprise me if Spurs score out there, and then if Spurs get the first goal relatively early on, then it's game on. So I think
you'll have Son back as well next week, won't you?
Yeah, he'll be back, and I think that's the thing with, and especially last night, I was really disappointed in Lucas Moura last night because I think he's been playing pretty.
He's had a good few games,
and I think he was disappointing. And if anything, last night, it does show that Spurs do need to strengthen in the summer. They certainly need to strengthen up front because I think nothing against Llorente. I like him. He's just not at the level that Spurs need a backup striker to be.
But I think the problem is like the likelihood of Kane and Son both being out is relatively low. I know it's happened now, but I don't think that they would want to invest in another striker.
Well, no, I mean, Son's suspended. I mean, and that's always going to happen. But I think to be honest with you, the thing that I would take away from especially the Ajax game yesterday is, and probably two things that may not be as apparent to a lot of people. One is how much Spurs missed Harry Winks. Just someone who can take the ball from the back four and sort of transition the game into attack. Something that he's really comfortable doing. And if I'd said to you 6 to 8 months ago that Moussa Sissoko would come on for Spurs in a Champions League semi-final and turn the game, I was going to say turn the game on its head, but the score remained as it was. He was absolutely outstanding last night.
He
And
came on, yeah.
he deservedly got man of the match. And from most of the press that I've read on the game, he got at least a whole point higher than the rest of the Spurs team in the player ratings. And bearing in mind he didn't start the game and he's come back from a slight injury, I thought he was absolutely unbelievable.
He played well.
Yeah, absolutely. But summary, poor result. 2 poor results for Spurs, but not the end of the world.
Right. We'll move on to the Palace Everton game, and then we'll move straight on to.
Yeah, so I think we might as well go straight to Fulham. I mean,
the Fulham game.
If there's ever two teams on the beach, I think it's these two. I think they've both been in decent form, and I don't think anyone can criticise them for a ball draw. That, I mean, literally, if I remember rightly, I don't think Palace had a shot on target, and Everton only had a couple.
Two teams there that aren't playing for anything. I think that showed.
No, I mean, I think Everton can still get 7th, and I think Palace can go a place higher or a place lower. I don't think there's much movement for them, but no, nothing to write home about in that one.
So we'll move on to the Fulham Cardiff game. Fulham. Where has this form come from?
Oh, that's crazy.
I said form at the moment.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I said to someone during the week, if you look at the last 3 or 4 games, I think Fulham will be joint top of the form table, and Shane Long's the most prolific Premier League striker.
Crazy, but
who would have thought that?
Fair play to Fulham. You know, I think since Scott Parker has taken over, they do look. I know he had his first couple of games are quite hard in charge, but I think since then he's really. It was one thing that Fulham struggled at was clean sheets at the start of the season. He seems to have found a recipe to keeping a clean sheet, and to be awful, if they can keep this form going into next season, you know, they won't. I don't think they'll have any.
No,
difficulty coming straight back up.
But I'll put this question to you, Chris, because it's just on the point you've just raised. Do you think there's anything to be said about the reason that Fulham's upturn in form coincides with them being relegated and players are putting themselves in the shop window?
Yeah, I haven't thought of it like that. No,
because if you do think of it like that, then the squad they go into the Championship with next year. I mean, I think it's pretty much a certainty that Ryan Babel's going to go. And to be honest with you, I think from what I've heard that he will go with the club's blessing, really. I mean, he's been one of their top performers this year when he came in January.
Yeah, but where's he going to get? He's 34.
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if anything, he can perform in the Premier League. He showed that he's still got something to offer. I mean, even if it's just a case of hopping on one of the teams that's coming back up. But I think there's a few players. I think Sessegnon's probably one as well. But I don't think Fulham will get anywhere near
what they would.
Yeah,
because
I think you could probably halve it, to be honest. I mean, I think there was rumours of him going for sort of 25-30 million.
Would you play him in the front three, or would you play him at left back?
I don't think it depends where he goes. I mean, he was heavily linked to Spurs. I wouldn't play him in a front three at Spurs, and to be honest, I don't think he's any better than Danny Rose. I'd rather keep Danny Rose and Ben Davies, to be honest. So
and for Cardiff, doesn't look great,
does it, mate? I think there's they had a chance. I think do they go to Leicester at the weekend? I think. No, sorry, home to Palace.
Palace, yeah.
Well, if they lose that, they're down.
Yeah.
But it's not over till it's over.
Yeah,
but I mean, they gave it a decent fight, didn't they?
Yeah, they've probably lasted longer than what most people would have said they would. But
yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, so the Southampton-Bournemouth game. well, as local derbies go, this is probably one of the better ones that you're probably going to see. And Shane Long scores again.
Again,
You know, he's
he's
probably
on fire.
yeah.
I can see some. I can see some of the big teams coming in for him in the summer.
I've actually got a question for you on this game and on the Leicester game, but I just want to quickly say how badly both teams defended in this game.
Oh, they were terrible.
If they were trying to put on an exhibition that a poor defending, it certainly showed. But
well, yes, but I mean, just quickly on that. So the point. Oh, Barcelona have just scored. Sorry. So why am I apologising for giving you an update? Barcelona
why are
have
you
just
apologising for Barcelona beating Liverpool?
I know.
That's a good thing.
Chris, Barcelona have scored, now deal with it.
Oh, did you see who scored?
Coutinho, I reckon. I haven't
the
seen
other
it.
one. The other one.
Suarez.
Suarez, yeah.
No, so I mean, the point keeps Saints in the Premier League, which I think they deserve to stay up. Hassan Hoodle. I love that name. What a name. He's done a decent job. I think the one thing with Saints is their defence. So it's only I think it's Burnley. I think it's only Burnley and the bottom three that have conceded more goals than Southampton. Even Brighton have conceded less. So I think, and Saints normally have a pretty solid defence. So that would be the one thing for Saints where I think they need to strengthen. But sorry, Chris, you had a question.
So my question is, so with the obviously the Nations Cup coming up in June, and I think it's potentially 2 games that they'll play. Is that right? One against Holland and then one against the final.
The final. Okay. Yeah.
So, first question is Harry Kane going to be fit for it? And if he is, would you take him?
Is that a Bournemouth and Southampton related question?
It is going to be. I'm going to get there.
Right,
I'm going a long way about it. All right.
If he's fit, he plays.
Would you think Tottenham would want him to go after him coming back from an injury?
I think when are the matches? June.
Middle of June.
I don't think it would. I don't think Spurs would stop him playing for England, and I don't. I think if it was 2 weeks before the end of the season, I think it may be a different story. But in the summer, I don't necessarily think so.
So with that in mind,
are you going to say about Danny Ings going in the England squad or something? Or Charlie Austin?
Wilson. So Callum Wilson. Do you think Callum Wilson will get another call up?
Yeah.
Or do you think You think he will?
I think he will, and I think he deserves to. I think if you look at the attacking options, and I think if you look at people like Rashford or people like Sterling, I don't think they're not going to play through the middle for me. No. Harry Kane will, and I think Callum Wilson probably will. And the interesting one for me on that is Vardy, because he's not. He's retired. Is he retired from? I'm not sure. I don't think he has, but he is on fire at the moment.
With the thought, this is going to be another question for you. Do you think him and Callum Wilson are 2 very similar strikers? And if you had to pick one to take, who would you take?
I'd probably take Callum Wilson because I think he is more one for the future, and I think that's probably how Gareth Southgate looks at it. He doesn't tend to. It'd almost be like him bringing Joe Hart back in,
right?
Well, sort of halfway through the season,
I know what you mean.
When Joe Hart was playing, I think for me I do prefer Wilson because he's got a bit more bulk about him. He's a bit more of a handful. He's a bit like a really fast Troy Deeney. Not that Troy Deeney's slow,
the point where Chelsea were heavily linked with signing him.
I don't think he's worth 50 million.
I would say I wouldn't have paid the money that it was being thrown around, but from what we've got now, if we could had the chance to sign him, I probably would take the chance. I would say 50 mil.
It depends how much. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, Chelsea won't buy him because he's not a big name striker who's at the end of his career, because that's what Chelsea do, isn't it, Chris?
Well, I thought it looks like he's maybe staying for another year as well.
Well, I'd buy Wilson then. I'd buy Wilson.
Anyway,
I don't know. 50 million is a lot, but to answer your question, yeah, I think he will get another crack at England. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Okay, so Watford Wolves game. That is a rematch in the FA Cup semi-final. Wolves maybe wanted to seek a little bit of revenge here. But I would say two of their best players this season, Wolves got the goals. Jimenez, who's, he's been phenomenal for Wolves this season, and Jota, who gets the occasional goal, but is always there when setting the goals up. But one thing I would say is obviously if Man City beat Watford in the FA Cup final, 7th place will get a Europa League spot. So for Wolves, I think they've got 3-point lead over Leicester at the moment. So, they could.
Well, Wolves, do they go? No, Watford go to Anfield, don't they? Watford go to Liverpool.
Yeah. And Chelsea they've got as well.
Yeah. I mean, just on Jimenez, I mean, he's got the same. I think he's got 13 this year, so he's got the same amount as. Just looking at the table now, so he's got the same as Lacazette, same as Firmino, Richarlison, Sigurdsson, Pogba. So I mean, he's got more than Lukaku. So I mean, yeah, he's had a great season. I think I'd probably say that Wolves deserve to get into Europe. I think the way they've played this season, I think they deserve it. I think if you look at, I don't know, I mean, Watford are 4 points off 7 now, and so are Everton. So if you look, I mean, maybe between Wolves and Leicester, there's a 3-point gap. I mean,
Chelsea I've got nothing to play Leicester as well.
Yeah, so. I've got nothing against Leicester, but I think I'd probably rather see Wolves in the Europa League.
I saw Wolves. They've already committed to a pre-season tour of a tournament in China, and there's literally I think if they come 7th, they'll go into the second qualifying round in the Europa League, which means their tour of China finishes, and it gives them 4 days to get back.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, every Premier League club at some point is going to go to Australia, or they're going to go to Asia or North America on these pre-season tours. But they're not necessarily going to play all the big guns, are they? I mean,
no.
If I was part of the Wolves setup, I mean, I think I'd be pretty clear on what the priority is. I mean, going out and spreading the brand's one thing, but
yeah, I think it's a tournament with about 4 or 5 other Premier League teams as well, from what I read.
But they're all announcing it, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, they're all sort of getting their fixtures in. I mean, I think Spurs are involved in this International Champions Cup with like Juve, United, and Inter. I think are the teams in it. So they're already announcing these pre-season tournaments.
Crazy. Anyway, well, the Brighton Newcastle game, a very very close game, and probably a fair result, a draw. Brighton obviously already safe. Same as Newcastle, so
Well, no, Brighton aren't safe yet, are they?
Sorry, I'm getting confused.
That point could be huge for them, really. 4 points is the difference with 2 games left. But Brighton's running is not easy. Arsenal away and Man City at home. You could feasibly see Brighton not picking up another point, but at the same time, you could say the same about Cardiff. So, but I think that's Brighton's first goal in, I want to say 11 hours. So it's something ridiculous. I think the last time they scored was in the FA Cup. Yeah, when they beat Millwall in the FA Cup. So they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. 7 games without scoring.
Tell you what, it's a good thing that they had a good start, first half of the season. Otherwise, they would really be in trouble.
I remember us talking about whether they'd maintain it and get into Europe.
Yeah, exactly. So
how wrong we were.
If they hadn't had that good start to the season, they'd be in trouble right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyway, Leicester Arsenal. Wow. So this is another failed attempt at Arsenal trying to get a Champions League spot,
Oh,
and for the second
Arsenal
game
were
in a row,
poor.
3-0.
Arsenal were poor, but that's the third game in a row they've let him free, isn't it? Because they lost to Palace.
And I ain't complaining either
Free.
because their goal difference was a lot better than Chelsea's as well, and now it's worse.
Yeah,
So,
well,
the sending off,
I mean,
though,
I don't.
didn't help them at all.
No. I mean, I'm not
Silly.
sure. I'm not. No, but I mean, it's one of those.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it sort of wholly warranted a red card, but I don't think that. I think Leicester were pretty much on top before the sending off, to be honest. Yeah. So I don't think it was that much of a shock.
But Arsenal,
big summer for Arsenal.
Their defence is just so bad. The amount of times the balls were going over the top, and Vardy was just finding. He must have loved playing against them because he was literally finding space everywhere. But the one other player that impressed me is that Tielemans.
Yeah, I think they're going to I think they're going to try and get him on a permanent deal. He's a good player.
He's going to be high on a lot of clubs' lists, I reckon, because I think he's definitely one of their.
Well, I think his value's gone up. I mean, he's only 21, and I mean he's got 3 or 4, maybe even 5 goals. He's got quite a few goals since he joined.
His club's Monaco as well, isn't it? So
yeah, and they'd probably
should be easy to tempt them away.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, and I expect they'll be glad of some money. Yeah, I don't know. Good player. I mean,
Leicester did play well. I don't think.
Yeah, but I do think if you look at Leicester, and I don't want to make it about Brendan Rodgers because I'm slowly sort of coming round to him. But if you look at the Leicester squad, I mean, in the back, so they've got Evans and Maguire. I mean, they're both internationals. Chilwell's an international. Tielemans is a very good player. Maddison has shown what sort of player he is this year. Vardy's still. You know what you're going to get with Vardy, and he's always going to get you goals. I mean, Schmeichel, maybe he's a bit more suspect than he was. Indeed, he's a decent player. They're not a bad side at all, Leicester. Yeah. And I think that I think they could do something next year. I think with Rodgers in charge, I think if they make some decent signings in the summer, I think they could. They could be a bit of a surprise package next year. No, yeah, absolutely. But Arsenal on the flip side, I think that this is going to be a big summer for some of these big teams in the Premier League.
He just needs to sign a defence. Lacazette and Aubameyang, there's nothing wrong with them, but
I think we can realistically see an Arsenal-Chelsea Europa League final, and that is going to be one hell of a scrap to get in the Champions League.
Well, I see Ramsey's played his last game for Arsenal as well, because I see he's out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's injured, yeah. But if you, I mean, well, let's assume United don't get top 4. There's going to be 2 big teams that miss out on Champions League football next year.
I'm used to it. I don't want to happen again.
But I tipped Arsenal to finish in the top 4. But I mean, from a Spurs point of view, I mean, 2 points above Chelsea, and we're 4 points above Arsenal, 5 above United. So Spurs. Well, I said this last week about Spurs winning on Saturday, but yeah, disappointing for Arsenal. Disappointing result.
Okay, Burnley, Man City. Man City. It was a bit of a basic win, really, and it's another 1-0 sort of grinding the result out, which champions do, I suppose. But I think Burnley did frustrate Man City quite a lot in this game, where they did find it hard to break them down.
I found myself being more excited by Man City winning than any other game over the weekend. I think purely because it keeps the sort of the race for the title alive. The 2 things for me on this, and I know a lot's been made of it, but just about the fine margins in this sort of level of football, when you're going back to John Stones clearing it off the line against Liverpool, and it was not over by sort of 11 millimetres or something ridiculous. Yeah. And then this Aguero's goal on Sunday is over the line by sort of 27 millimetres or something ridiculous. So that was the first thing, and the second thing is, I think there was a bit of a change in City towards the end of that game where Guardiola made a few substitutions, and Stones came on for Aguero, Otamendi for Sterling, and it was almost like they were shutting up shop, which is something you don't really see City doing. I know it's sort of in the
I think
last
it's towards the
five or 10 minutes, but
I think because of the amount of games that are left, he just doesn't want anything to slip up now because he knows. Because I think Liverpool are playing before them again next weekend as well. So
Liverpool plays Saturday night, I think, and then Man City play Monday. I want to say they want to play Monday.
Yeah. So
but City should win.
Yeah.
City should win both their games. I think I can't see City letting it slip, especially because they're not involved in the Champions League. If it stays close tonight with Liverpool Barca, that say what you want, that's a huge distraction. And something City don't have to worry about. So we'll see.
Keita actually came off injured for Henderson just before the goal.
Pretty early. Yeah, I saw that.
So yeah. Okay, so the United Chelsea game next. So yeah, United dominated.
Funny game.
But for a team that really did need to win this game, they didn't really show that at all in the second half. And I must say, Chelsea actually did play quite well second half, but I don't know whether that was because Man United was so poor. It actually made Chelsea look quite good, but
they still only had one shot on goal.
Yeah,
but I mean,
Higuain should right at the end as well. Literally last kick of the game. Higuain.
He's not even a proper footballer. He is awful.
He should have passed it across the face of the goal because I think it was Hazard was unmarked towards the back post, and it would have been an easy tap in. But can I just say, Rojo's tackle as well? That was awful.
Oh yeah, he should have gone. He definitely should have been sent off.
And he'd only just really come on the pitch as well. But it was a tackle. No need for that.
I've got a couple of things here, Chris. Yeah. First of all, how much better is Lloris than De Gea? It absolutely isn't. I'm so vindicated about putting Lloris in my Premier League team.
So this goes back to the start of our very couple. Like 6th or 7th podcast, wasn't it, where you chose Lloris over De Gea, and I think
I was right to do so.
A bit of stick, but
I was right to do so.
I was speaking to people, and they're saying that he's probably cost them Champions League football next season.
Yeah. So just a couple of things quickly. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. But at the same time, over the last 4 or 5 years, anything that United have done well is probably because of him. Yeah. So I think there's something to say that you can give him a little bit of leeway if you do feel that he's cost them, because he's been their player of the season the last however many years, and without a shadow of a doubt, he's been the best keeper. There's a lot of talk about Solskjaer dropping him.
He ain't gonna drop him now,
but
not in these last 2 games.
But do you think he'll stay? Because there's only one team I can actually see him going to in the summer, and that's PSG. I cannot see him going anywhere else.
They've got Buffon, but he's
not the future for PSG, and he's not first choice.
He's got a good future ahead of him, mate. Buffon.
Yeah, probably as a coach. But I can't see him going to Madrid because they've bought Courtois, unless they move him on.
He didn't look that bothered after he made the mistake. He kind of just got up and was just again.
Well,
trust me, I'm not complaining because first we were not in that game at all first half, and that mistake really did change the whole.
It was a mistake, and it was a decent fit. My second question, not so much about the game, is Solskjaer. That I cannot believe there's people reporting that United should sack him
already.
Yeah, honestly,
sack him now.
there is people in the press and in the media talking about the fact that he should be sacked
What, the first
because
10 games he took charge in?
because United need to be ruthless, and this is one of the reasons I think that we started this podcast, was because we wanted to sort of maybe give a view about what your average football fan is thinking or is talking about. But isn't it funny, and isn't football a fickle game, that everybody was crying for Solskjaer to be offered the job on a full-time basis because of the performances, and then it may be even a bit like Poch out, because whenever Spurs lose, all you do is send me Twitter feeds about everyone saying Poch out.
I'm just sending you what the people are speaking.
But it's the same thing. Now, all the other people on the other side of the fence who are saying they should never have hired him, they should have waited till the end of the season and all this sort of stuff, they're all now shouting the loudest because they've lost 7 of the last 9 or however many games it is.
Yeah, but it's not all down to,
But everybody, I don't think it's the manager.
He's got underperforming players.
That is not a Man United squad.
No.
And everybody keeps going back to, and I like Man United. I don't have anything against them. I think they're sort of a bit of a pillar of English football, probably the biggest club in the world. They need to move on from this whole Fergie stuff, because so many people are still saying they need to go back to how Fergie was and they need to do this and do that. Football's moved on. Football has moved on. Alex Ferguson was a one-off. There'll probably never be another manager again like him. But
he had the squad. He had the, in those years he won it, he had by far the best squad in the league, and that's down to him and the players. But
that's a fact.
I think Solskjaer.
And who have they bought? Sanchez. Sanchez is a waste of time. They're Smalling,
I was
Jones.
so glad he came.
I mean, they're
Sanchez
awful.
I think
they are
the problem
not Man United
he's
players.
got is he's inheriting an underachieving side. Don't get me wrong, the players that they've got, some of them are world class. Only some of them.
Yeah, but they need to perform at that level. And Pogba's your prime example.
Alex Ferguson's last season at Man United, the squad that he had then, it wasn't great.
No, it wasn't. But didn't he win the league with them?
He did, yeah. And that just gives you how bad the league was in that
year. I think Pogba sums up United. I've backed Pogba for the majority of this season.
I think he'll go. I honestly think
he's a world-class player who is performing at sort of an average level, and I think that sums United up.
I just don't think he's cut out for the Premier League.
No, I don't either. There's rumours he'll go back to Juventus, but Madrid want him as well.
You think how much they'll potentially lose on him as well?
Well, that's the risk you take sometimes, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, a good point for Chelsea. I was quite happy with the result. I thought it's a point at the end of the day, and considering Arsenal had lost, it was.
But it's probably it's a better result for the other teams in the top 4. It was a good result for Spurs, a good result for Arsenal, but not as good for either team that played it. Anyway, we'll move on.
We'll move on to the EFL, and Richard's got the championship.
Yeah, so there's, sort of live updates with the championship, really. But
Derby are playing, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, Derby, they're playing Swansea tonight. Yeah, they're 1-0 up. So just to confirm what we do know, so Norwich and Sheffield United have both been promoted. Norwich can win the league with a point on Sunday, I think.
Just a quick one. Their top goal scorer, is it Pukki? Has he got 29 goals this season? I swear it's 20.
Something like that, yeah.
That's crazy.
I think he scored a lot of goals, and they got him for pretty much next to nothing, I think. So they're definitely up. Norwich, like I say, Norwich can win the league on. I think they're all playing Sunday or
Sunday,
5:30. I think.
Yeah, they're playing Sunday.
But Sheffield United have secured automatic promotion. That was from the weekend. They beat Ipswich 2-0. But the result that sort of pushed them both up was Leeds Villa. So Leeds needed to Leeds needed to win that and then hope for, I think it was like a 10 or 11 goal swing, and for Sheffield United to lose in the last game. So it was a long shot for Leeds, but what on earth happened in that game? I mean, I don't want to sort of dwell on it too much, but it's really difficult because I don't think Leeds actually did anything wrong.
There's no written law to say that they have to kick the ball up, but what I would say is 2 or 3 minutes prior to that, Aston Villa kicked the ball out when a Leeds player went down. So
yeah, they did. I think the worst thing with this was that the way the Leeds, I don't know who the player was, but he played it down sort of in the left channel.
This is Taylor.
I thought he was going to kick it out. It looked like he was going to kick it out, but he didn't. But that's not Leeds' fault that Villa didn't play to the whistle. And Bielsa, I mean, he would not have done what he did if there was promotion on the line. I think he only did what he did to save a bit of face.
Well, the captain,
and because they weren't going up.
Even when Villa kicked off and he was let through, the Leeds captain, he was 50-50 thinking in his head, I'd just kick it.
Yeah, but what would have happened if he'd done that? That's one of the questions I find interesting. If he had cleared it, what would have happened? John Terry
was literally on the verge of knocking someone out anyway.
But I don't understand why. Because Bielsa was letting them score. I don't know. I mean, I don't think
he just got messy. And
we'll never know what was said. But
I'm so glad he's not at Chelsea anymore.
He's got a 2-game ban, I think.
Yeah,
and
ridiculous,
the Villa red card's been it's been rescinded. Yeah,
he didn't even touch him.
So yeah, after all that, Leeds will be in the playoffs along with West Brom and Villa. It's only really the final playoff place to be decided. It's pretty much between Derby and Middlesbrough. So Derby, if they hold on to their 1-0 win tonight, they'll be 3 points above Middlesbrough with a game in hand, and a much better goal difference. So Derby hold on tonight, it looks like they'll be in the playoffs. But this is what the playoffs are all about. You could have Leeds v Derby with the whole Spygate, and then a Midlands derby between West Brom and Villa. They will be two amazing playoff semi-finals. So yeah, that's the top. So at the bottom, the 3 relegation places are now confirmed, with Rotherham joining Bolton and Ipswich in League One. Rotherham needed to win at West Brom, and they were leading 1-0, but then they went down to a 2-1 defeat. So just a bit of context, the 3 that went down: Ipswich 1 win in their last 18, Bolton 2 in their last 16, and Rotherham 2 in their last 20. So not great. Bolton, it's not great what's happening there. The fact that the players are on strike and they can't fulfill their fixtures. But I mean, I think it's more of a shame when you think sort of how they were in the Premier League not that long ago, and they were having players like a Kocher and Campo and stuff. But
Ivan Campo,
yeah, Djorkaeff, fingers crossed they'll be back.
The thing I remember most about Campo, mate, was I used to get him in my sticker packs all the time.
He was they had Jaskelainen, obviously Kevin Davis, Kevin Nolan. They had a decent team, Bolton. Anyway, but yeah, unfortunately they're down. So into League One. So again, the results last night. So both Sunderland and Portsmouth lost last night. So that promoted Luton and Barnsley. So before those matches last night, because they were the games in hand, any 2 of the 4 could have gone up. But both losing, Portsmouth and Sunderland both losing last night, pushed Barnsley and Luton to promotion to the Championship. So the playoffs will be made up of Portsmouth and Sunderland. Charlton are also guaranteed a playoff place in 5th. And the final of the 4 will either go to Doncaster, who are currently 6th, or Peterborough, who are in 7th.
Peterborough won last night.
Peterborough did win last night, yes. So they're only a point behind Doncaster. So similar with the Championship, it's only the last playoff place to be sorted at the top. At the bottom, crikey, this is going to be one hell of a last game of the season.
Yeah.
So it's only Bradford that are confirmed as relegated. Then it's 3 from 5. So 3 points separate Scunthorpe, Walsall, and Plymouth, who are the 3 teams currently occupying the playoff places. And then Southend and Wimbledon, who sit just outside. So it's only 3 points separating those 5 sides. So yeah, the final day.
Great turnaround if Wimbledon stay up as well, because I remember
Yeah, I remember
earlier on,
every week we used
wasn't it? It
to
was like the
say,
bottom,
yeah, but if Portsmouth and Sunderland had won yesterday,
that would have made it very interesting.
Oh, what a last day of the season that would have been for top and bottom. So yeah, that's going to be a topsy-turvy day, I can feel. So the automatic promotion place is sorted for both the Championship and League One. Relegation sorted in the Championship, and relegation to be decided. Yeah, be interesting.
Now to
League Two.
the
Have we got some somber music?
The doom and gloom of League Two.
Yeah.
So we are almost at the end of season, but there is still quite a lot to play for in League Two for 23 other teams. So anyway, Lincoln, who have already won the league, they actually lost to Newport 1-0. So crowning their championship off with a good start. But Bury remained. So this is before the games last night. So Bury remained in second, and they didn't even play. But Mansfield in third, MK Dons in fourth, and Forest Green in fifth. All lost at the weekend. So the automatic promotion is now really between those 3 teams, because Bury actually won last night and gained promotion. So
they beat Tranmere. They played Tranmere last night. Yeah.
So there's one position still left for automatic promotion, and that'll be battled out between Mansfield, MK Dons, and Forest Green. Forest Green are 3 points off though, so it is going to be a bit of a task for them. But Tranmere, they are in 6th, despite losing last night, but they are safe. They've got their playoff place. But 7th is all to play for. And last night Newport won again, so they've actually stolen 7th place off of Exeter. So, but it's so close, literally so close. So they are in 7th now, Newport. But any one of these other teams could still win. So Exeter, Colchester, Carlisle, and Stevenage can still technically get that last spot. But it is all down to Newport now. So if they win their game, they will get that last playoff place. And now to the bottom of League Two.
I feel like we have. I know you were already a Yeovil fan, Chris, but I feel like I've adopted them as almost my second team.
Candle lit next to me.
And I feel this is a sad day.
My National League candle.
And especially after being 2-0 up.
Yeah, don't get me started. That's twice in 2 weeks now they've been winning.
But on the plus side, we've already arranged our trip to Eastleigh. They don't go up for next season.
Yeah. So it is all confirmed now. Yeovil, unfortunately, have been relegated after Macclesfield and Notts County both won at the weekend. Yeovil, as Rich said, were 2-0 up in their game as well. So it's kind of a bit of a kick.
Do they finish bottom? Do they finish bottom or not? Is that not decided yet? Oh no, they are bottom at the moment.
They can still second from bottom.
Well, that'd be an achievement. Yeah.
3 points off of Notts County, but Macclesfield still have that 2-point cushion. So again, fate is in their hand, Macclesfield. So yeah, that's it. National League news to come on next season's podcast.
Yeah, we've got a new feature. We're going non-league. We're going like Evo Stick Premier.
So yeah, I think I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that I thought that they'd probably get relegated, but This is a new start.
I was holding out hope, Chris, but
you didn't see them live against Newport.
No, but again, I mean, all joking aside, I think since we started the podcast. Obviously, you've got that link with Yeovil already, but we've had a lot of sort of feedback into the podcast from Yeovil fans whenever we've spoken about them, and obviously the issues with the manager and all sorts of stuff like that. So it might sound like we're joking, but I mean, I have sort of grown to be a bit fond of Yeovil, really. So, hence why they're in the predictions every week. But,
yeah, so the new
it's a shame.
Coming in now, and hopefully, it's going to be a bit of a rebuilding exercise. There was an issue at the weekend where some of the players were seen in a nightclub looking rather cheery after just getting relegated, and that hasn't gone down very well. And so
we'll champion the cause to get Yeovil back into into the Football League, but I think we'll commit to a non-league watch. We'll follow them.
A new era for the club.
Absolutely.
So that is the EFL. So that is all for part 1 of the podcast. We'll be back in part 2 with some prediction news, the special topic which we're going to look at the PFA Team of the Year, and we will try and solve Pete's teaser. So we'll be back in part 2.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of View from the Sideline podcast. We're just going to give you a quick update on predictions like we do each week. So only 2 rounds to go. We are at the end of having guest predictors in, and we've gone back and picked two people that have already had a go. So the wheel of fortune was spun, and Curt and Scott. That's right, isn't it, Chris? Yeah. So they were the lucky winners. So Curt's going this weekend, and then Scott will go the following week, which will be the last week, the weekend of the predictions challenge, just to try and have one last attempt at toppling Jamie. His score of 30 still stands as the highest.
You've seen the trophy now, Rex, as well, haven't you?
I have seen the trophy. Yeah. It is in protective wrap in my wardrobe. So Dave did it last week for us. Got 2 scores spot on. Ended up winning the week. Chris went from a record high to a record low. I don't know if I've told you this, Chris, but you and I are exactly the same. On.
Yeah.
With 2 rounds to go, we have exactly the same score. Which is phenomenal. So we'll see who comes out on top. So we'll get the predictions posted tomorrow or Friday, ready for the weekend. And then, like I say, next 2 weeks, if no one beats 30, Jamie will be crowned champion. So, special topic, Chris. PFA Team of the Year. I think that lots of debate on this, for various positions. I think because I don't think it's until you start thinking about the players that haven't made it that how difficult this is. So, I mean, let's start at the back.
Right, Edison. I completely agree with Edison being. I'm completely fine with that. He has been probably the most consistent keeper this season, apart from Allison.
Comfortably. I mean, so it's for me, it's a toss-up between Edison and Allison. It would have
been Allison. Yeah, Allison or Edison would have been one or the other.
And I probably lean. I mean, I can't pick Lloris because that would just be unfair. But I think. If you personally, I swing very, very slightly more towards Allison, and I think
it must have been pretty close between them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it probably was, and the only reason I slightly swayed more towards Alisson is I think he has had a bigger impact on Liverpool than Ederson has at Man City. But maybe that says more about the outfield players. So at the back, you can't argue with Van Dijk. He's won the PFA Player of the Year. He fully deserves his place in that side.
Best defender this season. In the
best defender in Europe, I reckon. I would say he's the best defender in Europe at the moment, maybe even the world. We can't argue with Van Dijk. So three of the back four are Liverpool. So Robertson on the left, Alexander-Arnold on the right, and then we've got Laporte from Man City in the middle.
Okay, so Robertson for me is probably the best left back in the league. Probably one of the most improved players, I think, this season, considering not many would have heard, his name before he moved to Liverpool. Laporte, he's been solid for Man City, but I'd struggle to find someone else to put in that position that's had that.
Do you think? I mean, I don't know. Maybe whether it's a bias. I think there would. I think Vertonghen's been brilliant for Spurs this year, and I think Alderweireld has as well.
Yeah.
I think I do wonder with Laporte what sort of gives him the edge slightly is the fact that so maybe that's given him a bit more of a high profile. But I think really, let's be honest, when you look at the top six sides, if you had Laporte, Van Dijk, Alderweireld, and Vertonghen, there isn't a lot else up there really. I'm not saying that
Chelsea to be in.
No, and I'm not saying that these players should be picked from the top six sides, but it's hard to argue with those. But I think the same with Alexander-Arnold. I mean, I think he's come on so much this season. And I think a lot of the talk about him is whether he's actually going to stay as a fullback. I think a lot of people actually see him being pushed further forward and sort of taking on a midfield role in the future.
Possibly.
Oh, sorry, Derby have equalised. Swansea have equalised, so it's 1-1. Yeah. So I think this is the talking point. So the three in midfield. Bernardo Silva, I don't think you can argue with that. I think he's been unbelievable for Man City this season.
I think last season as well. I don't think he had that much opportunity, and this season where he's had more games. And to be fair, because they bought Mahrez, I don't think that a lot of people thought that he'd be playing as much. But I think he has probably potentially been one of Man City's Sterling, but he's such a good player. I think we've seen some games this season where he's been absolutely phenomenal, and
I think he's taken the mantle from David Silva.
That's what I was about to say. Do you think that's where he's going to be heading? That sort of.
Yeah, probably, and I think he's scoring goals, he's creating goals, he's working hard for the team, he's tracking back. I think he's got a little bit of everything. And I would, if you were going to say that the actual PFA Player of the Year was between Van Dijk and Sterling, I wouldn't have said Bernardo Silva was that far behind him, to be honest.
Oh no.
So fully deserved.
Fernandinho, he's consistent for Man City. I find when he doesn't play, they do look more vulnerable at the back. I'd agree that he should be in there.
Yeah, I would as well. And I think if Chelsea had been any good this season, Kante is in there. Yeah. I think they're very similar. Just Man City have had a better season than Chelsea.
Let's get to Pogba. Right, how on earth is Paul Pogba in this team?
Because he was playing well when the players voted for it. That's what I think.
It's ridiculous.
I think it was around
the
the first 3 or 4 games that Solskjaer took charge. Pogba was extremely impressive, and I think that sort of ties in when these players voted. But there's no way he deserves his place in this team, and based on form as well. But it's when you start thinking about the players who didn't get in that it makes it even more annoying. Well, so this is going to sound out there, but there's a couple. So Eden Hazard, I think he's
missing from that team, definitely.
Bearing in mind I believe he's matched his goals and assists for last season as well. But just to throw a random one out there, Moussa Sissoko has had a better season than Paul Pogba, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. But do you think it's down to Pogba's neck?
He was playing well at the time, but Wijnaldum at Liverpool, I think he's probably had a better season than Pogba. I mean, you can even sort of stretch it out a bit. Maddison, I mean, he's had a fantastic season at Leicester.
What about our man Milivojevic? Look how many goals he's scored this season.
Absolutely. Wilf Zaha. I mean, if you're looking at a sort of silo of games, if you like, where a player's performed well, I mean, you could put Wilf Zaha in there.
Yeah.
I just think it's
crazy.
The players have voted for it, but
yeah.
There you go. I think Mane, you can't argue with him. No. Sterling, you can't argue with him.
And Aguero, I don't think you can really.
I don't think you can argue with him. But then you've also got to go back. This is where the players. So Salah, Firmino. These are the sort of players.
You see, I think these players would have been very, very slightly behind. You know that.
It's fine margins in this as well. A lot of people have been talking about Son at Spurs.
I'd say Son. You know, I'd say Son probably wasn't too far behind. I think he's probably been your best player this season.
Yeah, I'd agree. But then if you look, I know he's been injured, but if you look at the goals, Harry Kane's still right up there, sort of with the most Premier League goals, and he's missed a decent chunk of the season. But I think. I'd probably have Aguero in. I don't think I disagree with any of those front three. In my opinion, Sadio Mane has been the best of Liverpool's front three this season. I think that Salah's been good, but I think he's a victim of his own success from the previous year, if I'm honest with you.
He's had he's had another very good season though. If you look at the amount of goals he scored. You know, but again, like you said, I think he's because of what happened last season. I think expectations were probably high. So
yeah, I think there's going to be a decent bench in this team.
Oh yeah,
when you're thinking of like your Salahs, your Vertonghen's, your
David
Silva
as well, mate. To be honest with you.
Yeah, your Hazards. I mean, people like that. It'd be a blood. It was. Oh, sorry, shouldn't have sworn there. It would be a ruddy good bench.
I got a little fact for you about this team, about the PFA team, Rich. I know you like your facts. Yeah. Did you know every single player in this team has an assist to their name, including the goalkeeper?
I'm not sure that's that surprising, but that's a good stat, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a very impressive stat. Okay, so yeah, that's the PFA team of the year. So do you want to go on to the teaser, Chris?
Yeah, I have no idea who. I can't.
Okay, I think I've heard this before, and I think I can remember who it is, but it's a toss-up for me between two players. One of them is Rob Earnshaw, but I can't. Obviously, it's for Wales, the country, but I couldn't tell you what clubs it was for. And the other one is Craig Bellamy. Do you have anything to add?
I can't think of anyone. Literally, cannot think of anyone. Who?
Right. Okay. I'm gonna.
Stump me. Have a look.
Chris, stick it in your search engine. I'm gonna stick my neck out and I'm gonna go with my first thought, And this isn't because I know the answer to the question. It's because I think I've heard it before. And because I heard it before, I've heard the answer before. So I'm going to go for Rob Earnshaw.
Okay.
He must have scored a hat-trick for Cardiff at some point.
Google it.
Did he play for West Brom?
I have no idea.
Cardiff.
So the answer,
Who else did he play for?
the answer to your question.
I think it might be right because
is yeah, you're right. It was Rob Earnshaw. It is Rob Earnshaw. Let me just find out.
I don't feel as happy as I feel I should be after getting such a tricky question right.
So he's played for Cardiff, West Brom, and Norwich, Nottingham Forest.
Who was in League Two then?
Cardiff, I suppose, weren't they? Because he joined Cardiff in 1998.
I guess it must have been.
And he has scored a hat-trick for Wales as well. Let me find out who it was for. My God, he's been everywhere, this guy.
Okay, well, there you go.
Have a look at his international goal. Oh, he scored 3 in a friendly against Scotland.
As you do.
On 18th of February 2004.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
I think that's 2 in a row. We got right. Pete's going to have to up his game. He's going to give us some random
It was Cardiff. In Division, it was the old Division 3. So he scored. Yeah, it was Cardiff. In fact, he scored a hat-trick for Cardiff in the League Cup, FA Cup, Division 3, Division 2, and Division 1. And it was West Brom in the Premier League he scored a hat-trick.
He's been a busy boy. There you go. It's a good one. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for tonight.
That's it.
I think it's probably just worth saying at the moment. So next week's podcast, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, we're going to do our end of season awards.
Yeah. I'm going to get a tuxedo on.
As our special topic. So that will be, and then we've got one more podcast the week after the last games of the season, and then we've got one more to wrap up where we're going to do like a season summary at the end. So I think we've got 3 more left, Chris, before we pack up for the summer.
Yeah, summer holidays.
But we do have something exciting on the horizon. I don't know if we're releasing it yet or not, Chris.
Not quite ready just yet.
Not quite ready. Okay. Sorry, listeners. We are teasing you. We're teasing you and probably bigging this up. But yeah, just to say we've got a new venture on the horizon. Something we're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks.
Details will be given out in next week's podcast.
Yes. You may find a teaser on social media at some point. Anyway, so hopefully next week we'll be sat here with Spurs in the. Oh no, because it'll be before the Champions League because we'll be Tuesday night.
Tuesday next week, so you can watch the game.
So we'll have the second leg of Barcelona and Liverpool.
We'll know if Barcelona or Liverpool
are. And hopefully Spurs will be in the top 4. Because they would have beaten
Chelsea
Bournemouth.
Will be there as well. Yay.
So we'll see. Okay, let's sign off.
Next week.
Speak to you next week.